Welcome everyone to another Traders Community podcast. Been our first for a while with school holidays and all, taking a break. Here we are back after July 4th. I have the glorious Madavi with us.
Hey.
And so we had a little bit of breathing problems there. If you did get multiple emails, etc., restarting the podcast up. So without further ado, let's look at it. So it's been a very big week big week as in 2 days with what's gone on in Europe. Firstly, yesterday with numbers coming out of Germany showing that actually they had their first trade deficit, I think, in 20, 30 odd years, Madavi. Some huge number, mainly because of the increase in energy prices has done two things. What it's done is make it very difficult and for the consumer to buy goods and for the manufacturer to pay and run goods over there. Germany showing. So that's a massive event that's happened, that's flowing through to the markets. As you saw the DAX get pounded. You saw the euro do a first time it's been back down here since 2002, I believe. You saw oil get whacked. Natural gas, as we saw. Now, all this is pretty well what we've been talking about. That would happen. Oil and gas had held up perfectly. It finally broke that Kijun. As we said a few weeks ago, remember, this is not a financial recommendations or anything like that, just advice. Do your own diligence, and so you don't get caught on it. But why are we applying? Well, these things are up so much, you take your profit, right? Whether you did it or not, hopefully you did. Also for the traders, some really good shorts there, particularly on oil, natural gas, all changed on Freeport. LNG when they had explosion, and that has only come worse. It's now October as opposed to September restart. Obviously, there's other things in the wind there. What it's done is it's helped the inflation jargon or talk, if you like, and this is all on traderscommunity.com, who brings this to you. But in the 6 months, we had the biggest fall in Nasdaq ever. The biggest fall in like 50 odd years for the S&P. What also stood out to me was a lot of the futures were actually really well off for the year. Obviously not oil and gas and gasoline and a few of the others like pork bellies. But it makes you wonder if we're not headed for deflation. Well, I've always tried to push the point that you watch what the Forex markets and bond markets do beforehand, and they've signaled this for a few weeks, so it shouldn't really be surprised. The fear is of recession. Obviously, that's a big issue in Europe, not just here, but in Germany in particular. In Japan, you saw that big industrial production fall last week. So we've been offline from a couple of weeks as far as the podcasts go. But that's why you have a weekly, daily, you have a strategy. So all that's played out pretty well. So we look where we are right now. We're at 100, just over 100, just under 101 on WTI. That had a range of over $10 today. More like, looks like almost like 12. S&P back at 38.31. Russell 17.37. Natgas 5.57. Nasdaq 11.780, and the good old volatility, that's the word I was looking for, is 27.78. So quite significant moves. And as we go through the different stocks, you'll see specifically what we're talking about. So remember, everything is predictable in an unpredictable world. So what we finally saw on natural gas, we're now seeing an oil. So everyone gets so much the one way that it has just law averages, rubber meets the road. We can spin it however you want, demand, all this. The reality is the open interests have got smaller and smaller. People are all the same way. You had the same dribblers pushing it. be it on FibTwit or be it on Kramer. And overall, what we see, or technically we have that on NovaWave, we had this big channel. That was $10 of that today. It finally broke. But the sell, as you know, was off the ABC up the top. So it's been a really good trade for a lot of blokes. Have made, $30 odd on this. Pretty straightforward. If we look at the weekly, what had been holding it up was this tank, and then finally that gave through, and that was the same. So that confirmed, if you like, the tanking move. So if we look at the weekly, your big support is at the 50, which is at 92. If it gets through this daily support. Remember, this is a weekly chart. So what did we held? We held again all this noise, which is the old 50% and these previous lows. So when you trade oil, you need to go short. So remember these moves, it's in a thinner market than I've seen for, it's 10, 15 years or something. Lots of volume have come out of this market. Now this grid that I have here is relevant. And what it is it from that breakup, so to this high, right? If you remember, all that 161.8% of this move where all the volume was done. So we've retraced on that back to this 50%. So keep it all maps. That's what the algos are doing. If we look at natural gas, we looked at oil. Look where it's doing all the work. So what these charts really do is showing you where the balance is, right? Where it rebalances, where all the demand and supply is. And so the beauty is you can do all this ahead of time. This isn't after hindsight. Go back and watch our podcast if you're new to it. Hope it's helping. You can see all this work around the 50. But look what happens again for 8/8 and previous highs. It's pretty clinical stuff if you want it to be, right? That's what I always say, right, Madavi? Make it as difficult as you want it to be, as simple as you want it to be.
Oh yeah.
And it's pretty simple, right? It's hard when it happens because you're against the herd. So everyone said oil can only go up, natural gas can only go up, but things change. In natural gas, it was all about Freeport LNG. You're trading US LNG. And that affected Europe because all of a sudden they couldn't get those BCFs a day. And then what you're seeing, and this will be transforming over the years to come, is Germany was basically using cheap Russian gas to to feed their machine, which had become then, because of the profit motive there, and remember they're very much about giving it back to the workers, strong unions, etc. So instead of making it more efficient, and because of Schroeder, we won't go through all that with the Nord Stream, but go back and listen to it, they become beholden onto one source, right? And so they got rid of everything, and here we are. So their whole country's based on using cheap commodities to fuel their empire, whatever you want to call it. It all goes to crap. Norway had issues. So what you're seeing is a transform where they're not going to be so reliant on that ever again. Lo and behold, if that ever happens again, right? So you're seeing that play out. You hear about them talking about rationing and all this sort of thing for hot water. Whatever is clear is the damage it's done. You saw the GDP numbers. There's some good stuff on this in Trades Community. You're seeing the trade number. So if we go quickly to the euro, you can see what happened to that. And again, lots of stuff on this in Traders Community. None of this should be a surprise to you. So again, this is hurtling towards parity. And what I like about the euro, it's so deep that it follows this channel. This is a weekly channel. And look how it span either side. Now, when you get to daily, and don't forget also the US dollar is priced in US dollars, so it's also moving with the US dollar, right? So that's part of today's fall. But look on the daily. Remember this spit on the channel, It filled it all the way. Then remember Adam's rule, so it reflects up here, spit of the cloud, and we've been spinning around. Now look what we're doing, Murray math-wise, right? Didn't quite get to 08. Now we're finally at 08. We got the bottom of the channel down here. Parity. Funny how this works, is at -2.8. So that's your longer term view on that. We'll look quickly at the yen, given we haven't been here. The yen, dollar yen is still well built, but the yen got some support today via the euro yen. So again, this is another flag, and this did recalculate. This was the old +2.8, actually +4.8, I think. And we got this little pennant working here. The other disaster while we're away was in, where are we? In Turkey. Yeah, here we are. So Turkey's inflation, Madabi, is almost at 80%. So if you think you got a problem here, and Erdogan, who's a bit of a nut job as we know, no offence to anyone who's Turkish, but his view is that inflation is just I think a Western constraint. It doesn't matter. So he stopped. So firstly, you got their currencies collapsed, right? So they mainly import. So that goes through the roof. Then he did this. If you look at this move way back, he did a guarantee on the currency. Well, you can't really do that if you change it. So what's happened, that caused that move there. And since then, it's just gone from bad to worse. And there's a whole lot of political tensions, as everyone knows, with Turkey, with Kurds, with Russia, then with Europe, and so it's a bit of a mess. It's a pity because Istanbul's one of those beautiful cities in the world. I guess it's cheaper if you got dollars though to go visit, or euro, or anything really, right? So that's the other things we don't want to spend. Oh, we should look at the pound. The British pound being nothing short of a disaster today. I haven't been keeping up with it, but last I saw there was 3 ministers resigned. There's so much tension there between Boris Yeltsin and those who support him and those who don't. I mean, within his own party. Obviously, if you're not a conservative, if you're Labour or Social Democrat, you don't like the bloke anyway. But you can see the big problem the pound's having. And if you go to the euro pound, even against the euro, it was getting pound. It's struggling, right? It's been rising. So you got all these uncertainties out there, and that comes down to stocks. So let's talk stocks. Let's talk Nasdaq. Oh, Madavi's here. So, actually, probably I should start off with the SPOOs. SPOOs was pretty cut and dried today, I thought. So obviously a lot of the big moves have been going on. I've been talking and been very clinical. So before we left for our little break, we were still trading. We had the positions on that, but off here. We failed to go to new lows like a month ago, and we from there corrected all the way to the weekly tanking on S&P, and we're building that. We're spinning around the old 8.8s, right? Very clinical. Remember, Nova Wave's a combination of reading the herd and pure maths. So we use Ichimoku, we use Murray Math, Elliott, and stuff like that. What you want to do is become as clinical as you can. So if you look at the daily, if you remember, we had a false break of this, moved way back from 21, and we bounced in that. Then we spat the Kijun. That gave us a nice short up here on the daily, and we've been retracing that since. Today, we came back again, tested this breakup, didn't quite do it, and we held again. Now, what made this a good trading buy, so you know all this is in, so A, B, C, and the extreme bearishness out there, you use your VIX to take into account, and if you get... what's the word I'm looking for there? If you get divergence from that, we're going to look at it. So on a 30-minute, you can see 08 and all the way through. Look at what's happening to machines. Now, when we look at Nasdaq, this is even more clear what's going on as far as volatility goes and optionality. And eventually this will break out. But basically you got a lot of people who are really bullish, became bearish, and they're getting chopped. And that's the other reason, the point, there's a time when you just stay away from the markets, which has been recent times. Now the market makers are making a buttload selling this vol. Right, so here's today. Nice break. That's a half hour. It never even pulled back on a half hour chart. So let's look at Nasdaq. So here we go, Madaba. Here's that daily I was talking about where Kijun's just gone dead flat. Which just informs how sideways this market is. So here's a 5 minute from today. Any thoughts on that? It was pretty well straight up since minus 1/8. You there, Madaba? He might have logged on some positions he's got. But so we can see, and S&P is pretty much the same as I just showed you. We just went up all day. It's like climbing a wall of worry. And I made a comment on July 4th. Generally it goes up the night before, which was last night, which it did, and then came up. You got the patriotism fact. But really, let's look at what's really going on here. We're seeing, as we started off, talking about the different commodities, oil and gas, and we'll look at some of the others in a minute, they're all coming off. Bond market has signaled this for a couple of weeks. So and so is the currency. The concern is of the dramatic collapse around the world in so many things like sentiment, economic wealth, and it's not. And so, for those out there that think this is some great scheme, the billionaires and trillionaires and all this, not that there's really trillionaires, have lost a buttload as well, right? So all that's playing through, and that's pushing down interest rates. So what you saw today was people are buying into that a little bit. So they bought a lot of the big caps that were getting sold off in the morning. So we had a swing of about 4% on Nasdaq. So we're down 2 and up 4. You back, Mado?
Yeah, I'm back.
So here's Nasdaq. I got that. It was just straight up pretty well. Munch did that minus 1/8. Any thoughts on that? Oh, let's have a look at it.
This morning we sold off pretty good, but then we started rallying. But, the rally was mostly in Nasdaq. Microsoft and Apple and even Amazon and all them recovered.
Yeah, all those big caps, yeah, for sure.
That much, and because S&P was still down a lot, and it was Nasdaq that really pulled this thing up. So I think today is one of these days with low volume, right after the 4th of July, and it was a great day to crank it. So, and
yeah, it was definitely that.
I kind of got hit, and let's see what so. Then I'll try and play catch up at the close.
Well, the energy sector was really whacked. I mean, there was, if I look at some of these stocks that were down, obviously, I think, who was it? Halliburton was down like 9%. So what happens is, I mean, and this is where the dribblers on TV, and we keep saying to stop listening to them on Twitter, and these guys have no effing idea about pretty well everything. They're never wrong. I see the same blokes, and these people have 40, 50, 70, 80,000 followers, dribble on with the same people pushing them all up the top, down the bottom. They always push each group, and they never get you out of it. So energy was a good example. The people and we've been hyping that on this for a while to be wary of them, but also take your profit on energy when it gets all overvalued. And lo and behold, it has. Halliburton was down 9.3% when I saw it at one stage. That's $3. Conoco down 8%. Archer Daniels down 5.6%. These are big moves. And so the S&P, these are all key parts of it. So, as Madabi said, they struggled and the rest went up. So just be wary. Here's the reality. All those energy companies are still making a lot of money, given where everything is. But lo and behold, with your President Biden, this is your leadership. He sends out a bloody tweet basically threatening or calling them unpatriotic service station owners. Gas station owners, unfreaking believable. What about all the Apple? How much you charge for your phones, or Google for your bloody? We could go on and on, right, Madavi? But that's the environment, and it infuriated. Here's what's hilarious. Well, at least Jeff Bezos came back and said, "I can't believe that U.S. leadership is that ignorant." I can't forget his exact words, but he basically said they're either so ignorant of it, how to inflation and all this, or they're just straight out lying or try to redirect. Go have a look at it all. So you got all that in your background, and people and they must be just going, "What the freak?" So the hope is, of course, that all these prices go down for us, and all this SBR was a great trade, selling it all. As long as you can buy it back, right? Like at any trade. But in reality, what's really helped for inflation and oil, and I want to say it was Vito, one of the blokes there, and I think it became public now, but we might have mentioned this a few weeks ago. The blessing or the saving grace was China, by locking everyone up for whatever reason. They didn't have the food, the whole COVID thing, right, Madawi? Was it stopped all that demand. So it stopped all that oil and gas demand.
Coming back online now. So
well, it's kind of coming back on, right? So, and here's the other great misconception out there. So Russia's oil is the Urals oil, which is priced $30 to $50 lower than Brent or WTI, right? So they're not making what you think. Just stay away from the extreme. Can't use that word. Parental advice. Stay away from the extreme pros and cons. They don't know what they're talking about. They're based. Half this stuff is bots. It's pretty obvious what's going on now when you see things like the German trade number. You see the stuff going on in Russia with inflation. It's 4 to 5 times here, or Europe not getting stuff. They're not able to actually do the production because they can't get the parts. Then you got what's going on in Europe. We just talked about England. We just talked about what President Biden said. I mean, all this stuff in a world where sentiment is so negative. It's record sentiment, negative sentiment in America. It's, I think, Germany or somewhere in Europe's record. I mean, they're all at record and near records in a lot of these countries, right? And as Manabi said, today was low volume. And just think about it. So all this selling that's gone on today in commodities, so this oil just gets the news, right? Because the President of the United States made it a big political issue. But we all know we've been paying more for everything. Now I'm going to show you some prices. If you eat bread, ask yourself, why the hell am I paying so much? This is wheat futures. So a lot of this stuff got pumped by brokers or dribblers, or people are on the other side and they go, oh, these people are short. Well, here's wheat. So to fill you in, as you all know, Ukraine and Russia, I could be a bit out on some of these figures, but roughly, Madavi, I think it's 30% of the world's wheat comes from Ukraine, Russia, and other areas that produce it, like Australia, America, Canada. A lot of them have had big weather events or whatever. We all know the shipping. Whatever. The story was this stuff's going to go up forever. So they get you in there at 680, goes to 1360. Right now, live, it's 805. Just lost half its value. But I didn't hear any threats going out to these guys. But look what happened. Now, this is, by the way, with every bullish situation like Putin bombing Ukrainian ships, etc., and they're going on about freeing up the ports. Well, the market's had a pretty good way of sorting that out. That chart's pretty incredible. That's wheat. Okay, that's one of them. Let's look at corn, right? Corn is even more impressive.
Coming out of like 80% now out of Russia, since they got like 30% more property.
What was that, sorry?
What do you think?
So let's be clear on Ukraine from day one. Russia has been after their Russian ethnic Russians, who Putin has never wanted till it became an issue. That's the industrial part, the east part, or known as the Donbass. He's been pretty well. So if he really, really supported that part of those people, he wouldn't have flattened it all. So that's what's all been flattened. There's no ground there where they're growing wheat or anything. But the ports are close. So there's all different stuff he's got going on. No doubt it's been a disaster what's gone on there. As far as these futures prices, that's why I'm showing them how much of it's bullshit that comes out, particularly from the Russian propaganda on that. So that's wheat. Corn is your next one, right? So corn, from an energy point of view, corn's in ethanol in the United States. In Brazil, they use sugar husks, etc. So look what that's done. 820 down to 590, right? And this is all on the Trades Community website. What you want to do is look at the acreage reports, and corn actually increased their acreage. It's back to the number one in the US. So that's also got some to do this. The point is, this just shows you how much of it's a myth, right? Now, so way back in 20, these prices all went up because of drought and acreages and all that, right? So you can take either sides of these on the hype from, obviously the propaganda is on Reddit. What's that meter? 10 is, if you watch Spinal Tap, it's at 11 from Russia and the Ukraine side. So these charts kind of tell you what's really going on, because this is the market, right? So that's nothing that Russia's saying and nothing the Ukraine's saying. When I say Ukraine, I mean also, obviously, Ukraine's support from the West. So look at these prices. So what's the other one? Soybeans isn't really a Russian deal. That's more Brazil and, what do you call it? The U.S.?
Today's rally is going to be a price peg. There's going to be a definite big sell-off for this.
Oh, what, on soybeans?
No, I'm talking about the overall market.
Oh, right. Oh, okay. Yeah, right now, but we want to go through this. So, soybeans have come back to that break again. See, these are all clinical. Hopefully, you go back and learn your Murray and everything. And this is nothing new. We go through this every week in your weekly report. And guess what? We do all of the people who contributed. It's all for free. None of that. Just so you get the good advice, rather than paying and not understanding it or pushed. So here we are, 1800 to 1400. So then let's look at our next lot of commodities. So we watch Alcoa for aluminium or aluminum, depending on how you spell it. That was a perfect trade. Now this, remember, also gets the equity effect. So aluminium or aluminum was pushed by everyone. Alcoa went from $4 to almost 100 Badavi. And right now we're sitting at $42. And this isn't a big time. But look how clinically mathematical it is. So a lot of dribblers go on and on and on about capturing people short. Short's got to do this. Well, look at this chart. The big blokes were getting... So remember, to sell something when you have size, it has to go up first. Just look at Alcoa. And when I say sellers, that could be, as Madavi has mentioned many times, people doing secondaries and all this sort of thing. They sell them into this. And you'll get all these people, I beat the shorts. Really? They have a long game plan, and that's what you need to have. So look what's happened.
As whenever we see a stock that says it's got like 4 million shares in the float, but we see it's already done like 200 million shares.
Yeah.
No, those are shorts.
Well, that's the other thing. So they're happy to sell, right? They're happy to... I mean, it's an interesting game. And so the speculators all get long. The guys that want to sell already short. They got no interest in buying this back. So it all becomes one-way traffic. Now, if we look at silver, which Madavi likes to call the dribbler precious metal and fool's gold and all that, and he's got a point. So we pointed out a long time ago how weak silver is. And in fact, someone chastised me for even suggesting, where do you think it goes? Probably the bottom of this channel. Because it all gets one way, and people go as conspiracies and all this sort of shit. JP Morgan, well, if it's a conspiracy, how does everyone know about it, right? It's all just, it's horses for courses. They know that people are going to pay it. So that's silver. Look at this dribble. That was a classic up here at 30. All technical. The technicals are just showing you what happened. You know, it's not magic. And then we look at gold. Gold, we've pretty well done the one trade on this. When it broke this, did the double top. It's coming down the double top. We're now under the cloud. Remember, from a bull point of view, it had to hold this. This was when it was a pennant. And we changed it to the median just to make it easier for you. And it failed that up here at the Tenkan. So the bullish count was A, B, C. It had to break this Tenkan. And it gets back in the channel. So now in the bigger picture, is this a double top? If so, obviously it comes all the way down here. But if this is a continuation pattern, we're going to look, it needs to hold here, get creative, but you can see it dribbling down here. So pretty clear on gold. And the only other commodity we want to talk about is copper. This was clinical again. So remember, we had it very clear. It's a 5 or a 3. Plus 4 pips. You see this? So you just got to be, sometimes these are hard, but you got to stay, hopefully what I'm showing you gets you to stay away from the dribbler fraternity. Be it the small bloke on Twitter who thinks he knows it all, part-timer and all that. And now, in saying all that, you can certainly make good money if you're a part-timer and you stick by the rules. So it doesn't matter if you're a professional or a part-timer. This is a market you can make it as long as you stick to your rules. We have a bloke, a mate of ours, who will take these outlandish positions based on hope and fear. You don't want to be doing that. That's the market, right? So here's what I'm watching on copper. All this resistance down here, not too far away now at 330. So again, this is all to do, not just speculation where they went up too high and it's getting unraveled, but an economy that's just fallen on its ass. So here's where if you want to be bullish going forward. If Germany, in particular, sorts all their stuff out with energy, they become this massive powerhouse, right? Because they're going to have it from other sources and all that. Now, your answer, I had to tell you, isn't from renewables because of the sheer costs of it and the limitations from it. Over time. So if they were legitimate about that, they should have been transitioning much stronger than that over time. Some of these countries have, but you've seen with the protests in Holland, you can't just ban farmers, force people to change. We're human beings have been doing the same thing for a long time, right? Houses, I think Elon Musk is onto something, Madabi, and you've done it yourself. You do solar on spaces that are already available, like the top of houses, factories, and all this sort of thing, right? You don't just take rural air and all of a sudden you got no food. You have a drought. See, they've tried to play God, play with nature, and upset the whole food chain. There's some look. We all know about the stuff with butterfly effect. It was called. Pretty cool book. How it moves. But even things. Look at bees. You play with it. You try to play God, and disaster can happen. Right. No, being serious, Mother Nature. So there's what kind of works in the areas of, look at some of the ancient communities that have done well and survived and then developed. I don't mean ancient things that are still doing the same shit they did 2,000 years ago, chopping heads off, running around in bloody... That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that have gone so mature and developed and realized their deal with nature. You got to do it rational. But what's happened in the West in particular, and you see this in communist China, and you see it with Putin, and go read up how Putin was created, by the way. You guys all have theories on it. the oligarchs. Read up about those oligarchs. Go read it up. And Yeltsin and all that. And you might get a better, clearer understanding of what's going on from around there, around the world. And then read up your Nazi propaganda stuff from 1939. Lots of interesting facts there. Now, all that factors in on your herd mentality, these waves we're looking at. I just brushstroke really quickly over commodities, but that's all of it. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off before, mate. But if you can talk more about the stock market, I just wanted to get through all that because people need to know that stuff. So here's S&P daily. So let's look at that. That is, where's my daily chart, Johnny? Maybe we got I'm either going blind or it's maybe I just did this. That's what I did, yeah. So here's our daily, and so everything we just put in there are reasons for what happened. Why interest rates are doing this, why the herd. We brushstroked a little bit over the whole geopolitical mess. I think it's all pretty clear. It's a mess. No one knows what they're doing. You got big boys with big egos or little boys with big egos. That's what's running these countries. It's very totalitarian. So here we are. So ABC. We had that Kijun sell-off. And as Madavi said, this is all on low volume, etc. Remember, also, we're getting a ton of earnings warnings coming out. So in the weeks away, who warned? Nike warned. Who else warned? BBBY, that's all your retail. You're going to have all these energy companies going to come out. They're going to make a buttload of money, Exxon and everything. But these guys aren't stupid. They know they're part of a political game, but I think the public's getting more aware. But they may came out and warn. You go, demand's getting crunched all over, so they may give not what you're expecting. So we also know what's going on in tech, the problems. Tesla came out with their 18% down on the car sales. Ford was out today. GM last week. So there's so many negatives out there. So you got to ask yourself from a fundamental point of view, what's going to change all this around? And the reason we spoke kind of laughingly about these leaders like Boris Johnson, Joe Biden, Vladimir Putin, Xi over in China. I mean, these people are all in each way are pretty unsettled individuals dealing with their egos and their machines. And behind all that, if you believe you've got all this money that's been lost by these corporations that started to believe, when I say corporations, Madavi, I'm also talking about these filthy rich individuals. How much money have all these people lost, right? It's trillions. Whether they care, I got to say though, I think you've said it before, the great trade of the year, the great trade last year was Mr. and Mrs. Bezos, I reckon, selling all the Amazon stock. But I got to say, if Elon Musk pulls his bid on Twitter, pays the bidding out if he wants to go that, or accuses him of fraud, takes it to court.
I vote for Musk. He's a legend.
Well, so he's still got to do that part of the trade because he sold all that stuff. I don't know. It's pretty hard to beat the Bezos. Huh?
He got people to vote to improve themselves.
Oh, yeah. So he played the herd. But what I'm saying is if he doesn't buy Twitter, he's got all that freed up, right? If he buys Twitter, it all gets put into that. We'll all see what happens there. But Bezos sold at the top. Mr. and Mrs. Good team effort there. I have theories on that. We had those Fed governors. They're up the top too. Remember, up the top, those two Fed governors, Rosenberg and Kaplan. I mean, there's some pretty great traders right now, right? And now let's look at the shit traders, who I've got number one, possibly the worst trader because he's done this twice, is that Michael Saylor guy. So if you want to do a bit of history, punters and dribblers, because he's got to be one of your favourites, have a look at MicroStrategy back in early 2000s. How many billions went there? He's doubled. He didn't only do it once, he's done it twice. So he's probably, his protege, and this is all alleged, is probably that bloke on GME. What was his name?
All right.
Who was backed by Cohen. So when you get whacked once, every great trader I've ever met who's made a lot of money has been whacked and lost, because you got to realize, hey, you're not bigger than the market, you're not God, and all that sort of stuff. So these people have recycled the same theory. And what's bad with Saylor, he's one of these dribblers who was all over. So Bitcoin, there's a lot between Bitcoin at 1,000, 3,000. It's really just a means of exchange. I think I've gone through that 100 times. It is not the blockchain, it's just a currency. This bloke doubled, tripled down, Johnny, with 50,000, 60,000. So are you freaking kidding me? Same thing as, what's his name? Who am I thinking of? Who started Twitter and Jack. Well, I can't think of his last name right now.
Yeah, the Mac.
So he loads in at 50, 60. Musk, 30, 50. So I got a feeling, Muskie might have sold a bit. But anyway, the bottom line is, these are the icons for the dribbler, and everyone else is a dickhead. Now, I don't really give a shit if Bitcoin somehow manages to get to 200,000, 100,000, 50. The reality is they're blowing everyone up along the way there. And that is just the epitome of all these other stocks. That's what's behind. So even if, just say, there's a percentage possibility that we have seen the bottom or thereabout on NASDAQ and all that. Well, just think how much supply is above here, right? Of all these people caught. So much, man. Anyway, we've been away, lots to talk about with all that. Just wanted to share all that with commodities. So all this is not, we're not talking, do yourself a favour, go back and listen, we're not talking after the event. We tried to walk everyone through this, what's going on, how it goes in desks and big shops, and share that opinion. And the real facts that kind of matter is kind of what we put on Traders Community as far as economic stuff and other things, and the rest is shared either by this. Be wary, and as I've said before, understand the bond market, understand the currency market, and understand the commodity part, how those that actually understand it and do it, and how that leads everything else. It leads everything. Politicians, and we have the best example here in the United States, is basically following all that and building policies on it, as we mentioned about the gasoline. And you're seeing people use energy as a weapon with Putin, and the OPEC's done it before. And then you saw reverse use, I guess. I don't know if I explained this well, but they turned America, like the oil patch here, into a weapon against them, the Permian. Look how that worked out. Canada turned it on them with the oil sands. Look how that worked out for Canada. So all this stuff, and you're just pawns in it. As traders and investors, you want to get your hands on that as quickly as you can to understand it, right? And nothing is as it seems, as the great Eddie Vedder said many years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing is as it seems, right, in any way. So just get your head around this fact. I know everyone knows more than everyone else, and this is what I love about partisans. I just look at it as black and white. You think you're better than the other half, they're all dead shits. They don't know what they're talking about. They think the same about you. These politicians you have as leader, if you really think half of these are in it for yourself, I mean, it's just laughable, right? The whole...
Or McDonald's for most of these people.
Hey?
Most of these politicians will either be working at McDonald's...
Mate, don't knock Ronald McDonald. He'd do a much better job than some of these.
Parking cars. Guards, valets. These guys are a bunch of idiots.
But all it does is preach hate. So you got this whole stuff going with Trump. Obviously, the guy became pretty unhinged. I don't care how much you love or hate him. Just look at it for facts. Look at the good stuff he did, the bad stuff. Look at the courts. Look at law. I mean, it's just all one big thing. And all it's done is get you all against each other. Now, that's just what we know. The same thing goes on in every country. But it's not because there's some great plan. Because if this is a great plan, I'd had to see the bad one. You know, with all these great theories out there. It's just so make sure to look after, number one, yourself, your family, and your good friends. And do it. If I have someone... Huh?
If you introduce chaos, you get away with a lot of shit.
Oh, and that's exactly what's happening. That's kind of my point. But it's just mistake on mistake on mistake. The great one is how... Here's what I love about what they've done with Jerome Powell. And love, I say, with sarcasm. Jerome Powell came out and said the truth in November. Obviously, they thought it was going to be transient. But as I've said many times, they don't understand the whole geopolitical thing. Unless you think they're part of it, which is always a chance. But anyway, he said back in November, this is supply-based. I can't control this inflation. No one, you know what I mean? He does it. Then we have wars, which made it even more. Now I've gone through at the top of the hour how much a lot of these commodities have come back. But somehow it's all his fault. So, and I've said before, raising interest rates when you're already taxing, which is the point of raising interest rates, it's a form of tax on all those high energy costs and high food costs, which you come back, you're just throwing more mud on it. And what you're doing is making a shitload of money for bankers, right? And don't forget, when oil and all that goes up, who makes the most money, as Madavi said at the top of the hour? The bloke owning the petrol station or the service station or the gas station, whatever you call it in your neck of the woods, doesn't make a lot of money. It's really just a way for him to get in and flog you soft drink or something, right? It's tax. It's tax. So oil governments actually like high energy prices. They don't tell you that. That's why they blame everyone else to pay for their great spending, you know?
Let me tell you how much they care. California, I think, just introduced a new tax on gas.
Yeah, exactly. I did see an intriguing ad over the weekend from your governor over there, Governor Newsom, who apparently is related to Nancy Pelosi.
Here's the crazy part about it, right? People actually voted to pay more for gas, and I think that's why I think the elections. I've never met because that's how Arnold became governor, because the Davis or whatever raised the gas tax and the DMV tax. They threw him out of office, and now people are voting to pay more at the gas pump. It makes no sense.
Well, so exactly, it doesn't make any sense. It's just so partisan. So it's called politics of hate. And the Nazis and all this is all this sort of stuff. It's been well learned and tried. So they know it doesn't really matter what you do. You will vote for your side because you hate the other side. And we know the standard talking points in America. You know, to get people... Remember, there's only, 50% of the country votes? Right? Is that my right? Sorry, mate?
Crude.
Oh, yeah, I'm watching it, bro. 101.85, 108.84.
Oh, yeah, here we go, baby.
So, anyway, before we get too excited about oil trading prices, so with the partisan stuff, and so they know, so there's only 50% of the country votes, right?
No, that's MC.
So they go for these hot points, and it's all lobbied, and that's why these issues keep coming. They could fix any of this up, particularly with the medical things like abortions and all this. They could fix that up. Madavi knows more than me. With a Congress bill tomorrow, right? But they don't, because then shit. What are we gonna get everyone mad about? A lot of that's just one view. One thing. There's so many like that at a state basis, but they keep it going. And the nonsensical bit is to add what Madavi said, that Gavin Newsom, governor of California, ran ads in Florida to get Florida people to go to California. So let me think. You got the highest taxes, you got the highest homeless people, all this sort of stuff. You're going to end up in the ocean with an earthquake, and you want to attract people from Florida that you've made fun of the whole bit, that whole Florida man thing, to pay more tax, right? And the good news is if you're homeless, I guess you get a free tent. I don't know how it works. But
you also have a lot of abortions if you want.
Yeah, and you can get all that while you're at it. So that's the whole situation is kind of, and this is all under our stock market. So there's two ways you can look at it. And this is what catches you. And what it makes everyone is numb, right? Because you're pushing both views instead of meeting in the middle and having common sense. All these things can be decided other than by the nut jobs on either side of extreme left, extreme right, whatever you want to call them. And those words get mixed around anyway to what they really matter. I have never met a sensible person yet who is all right or all left, right? Because have your own opinions, you'll have some of either, blah, blah, blah. And that's what makes a rational world. And then what's all this got to do with trading? Everything. Because that's affecting you when you buy and sell and make decisions. You get mad and angry. And the whole point is the reason we have Nova Wave and all mathematical is so we get away from that emotion. Right? You want to trade hard. You want to be aggressive when you're trading. It doesn't mean you take that aggressive nature from something else. It means you're clinical in your trading, right? So, but we're so far away from that right now as a market. They don't know what they're doing. They're just following it. What happens to sheep when they just blindly follow? Anyway, that's kind of a quick overview of what we've seen with 2 weeks of a lot of news. Brushstroked altogether. Oil's back over 100, so expect some silly comment to come out of some government somewhere. And so here's the other thing. Clearly, these policies have stuffed everything up, ESG without transition thing, but so what we're seeing is blind justification for that because the oil companies are really bad. Well, the oil companies have improved a hell of a lot. We all know how bad they were, right? Just go and look at some of the court cases with Vitol and all this back in the day, or with other companies in Nigeria, with bribery, with Exxon, or pick a bloody company, BP. But if that's what you're hanging your hat on, these old situations, then they've got you right where you should be for them, right? So think for yourself. You got to develop from that. For example, we saw Exxon, great trade, Madavi, great trade. Look at all that natural gas. Remember when it happened? We talked about it on here. They sold all those natural gas lease shit when it was $8 or $9. How good a deal is that? So, and that gets them out of that fossil fuel. So these companies are developing, and they know what they're doing. They're not buying up there, they're selling. And they did it.
Why would you want to develop oil right now? Because you have the refinery, so it's not going to go anywhere.
Well, that was all natural gas, even better, 100%. So,
if you have refineries, you could produce as much oil as you want. It's not going to help you.
Right, so, and that's a good thing. So, a good point is that we've talked how the refinery utilization is on flat, right? Flatting chat. But the good oil companies are getting out, not in, right? But that's not getting reported. Sorry, mate?
Nobody's going to build another refinery.
Well, you can't because of the EPA laws makes it so unprofitable. And those laws are good, right? Environmental laws, sorry.
They might not never get their money back.
Exactly. And that's the nonsensical stuff coming out of Biden's mouth, right? So, and, he's just a mouthpiece for all that organization. We get that. but he's got to be very careful when you're...
Instead of giving away the old weapons and then building new ones, he could build like 20 refineries if he wanted to, because that would...
Well, the pollution factor is what's massive. Well, you can't build... You can't... It's not... Yeah. Well, that's a whole different thing, right? So, no, it's not... So it's not that simple. Firstly... You can't even get the steel and everything because of the supply thing to do a lot of this stuff. But if you're going to turn around and shut down pipelines as your first big thing when you get in, and then turn around and threaten all these other things, people have memories. Just because you mightn't have a memory, i.e., I'm not making fun of his situation, but bottom line, people do remember that stuff. And there's a turnaround on a lot of this stuff, right? And so as far as, let's just take an electric car, for example. The worst, so we're talking about building refineries, how bad it is for the environment. Some of the worst stuff is rare earth mining and all that type of mining, right? But they're giving all this money to the, and you know, you want to know who made Elon Musk risk? That whole movement. Right? So you got to be careful what you're doing when you're accusing oil and... So we all know oil and gas had a free ride over the years, but so did this mob. It's the same thing. You can't use the same story over and over and over again for EVs. Let's hope it gets more efficient. Okay, there's a good article on Trades Community about how VW is quickly catching up to Tesla and all that, because they got the whole market, right? Tesla just has the high end.
Isn't Tesla buying VW? I heard it other
Yeah, I heard some little drunk dribbler going on about the other day. So just get your head around how logical any of this stuff is, and that's what runs markets, right? So let's just a reminder who VW is. It's Audi, Porsche, VW. And let me tell you one more thing. There's a little bit of difference between market capitalization, ask Michael Saylor about that, right, and what you can use with it. And that's why that's why I pointed out early how good his trade was. He knows the value of Tesla shares. Why do you think he put the sell button on, right? Let's be realistic. And here's the funniest thing of things like Tesla. They become a cult. And then they became an anti-cult because it became a political thing, right? Because of Twitter. How the hell is free speech a bad thing if I'm a socialist, a true socialist, and I want to get my word out to give everyone a fair go, I want as much as that access to that sort of thing as I can get, right? Without being manipulated. But big government used to be, that's how nonsensical it's got. People call themselves left, right, free, that. They don't even know what they're talking about anymore. They don't know what they stand for. They don't realize they're a pawn in the whole system. Anyway, so that's our little rant. We wanted to over-rant a little bit because we haven't had anything other than dogs and kids to talk to. But that's all your market. And actually, if we're talking about Tesla, there's your Tesla chart. Look at that. 1240. Got all the way down to 600 odd. We're trading at 690 right now. That's a lot of loss of market cap that happens very, very quickly. Huh?
Amazon looking good.
What's Amazon doing?
It's up 4 points today. So is my Roku, everything. Look at all that.
Yeah, so that we're talking about trading right now. I thought we were talking about something different there. But anyway, so the point of the matter is when vol gets cheap too, take advantage of the optionality out there in a lot of stocks and what goes on. Okay, on that note, let's leave you up where the markets are. If you like what we're doing and if you like us back, well, I'm happy to take another hiatus. I'll give you a little tip. Like us, share us. Any thoughts? Remember, you can talk while we're live on these broadcasts or on Twitter or on the website. There's a whole forum there discussing stuff that a lot of people don't want to share publicly, and that's all good. Okay, so we'll leave you at 101.80 and 38.28. See you around.